Welcome to the Iranian Republic YouTube channel and Happy New Year. Since the fall of its dictator, Bashar al-Assad, Syria has undergone significant transformations. Ahmad al-Shar and Tahrir al-Sham have gained control in Damascus, while SDF forces have held on their presence in the east, and the Syrian National Army has secured control in the north. Additionally, Israel has conducted incursions into the southern regions of Syria, further complicating the issues. In light of these developments, we have invited Dr. Tarek Abou-Ghazala to discuss these matters and provide insights into the current state of affairs in Syria. Dr. Abou-Ghazala, it's a pleasure to welcome you to the Iranian Republic YouTube channel. And I would like to start by requesting you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about your organization, Home Revival Initiative.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here. My name is Tarek Abou-Ghazala. I am a cardiologist. I work in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area. So that's my real job, is a heart doctor. I also have been involved in politics since the break of the revolution in March of 2011, trying to get rid of the dictatorship that had ruled Syria not only since 2011, but like since 1970. And even if you want to see, like, when the party took power, it was 1963 back then. So I am the chairman of the Kayla's List Political Action Committee, which is one of 8 organizations that form a coalition called the American Coalition for Syria, the ACS. And we work for advocacy for Syria, for freedom in Syria and in the region where Syria is there. And we have been working in the political arena since like 2017. The coalition came to be in 2021, in October 2021. We announced the coalition, and it's been working since then. We have staff, we have a full organization in Washington, D.C. We have good communication with both sides of the aisles, of Republicans and Democrats, that help us to they were helping us to push back against the Assad regime, all the crimes that he's committed, the killings, the Keptagon, like selling drugs in the region, getting like young people, the youth, addicted on that. So we found like friends here that would help us in that. So this is in a nutshell what we do.
Awesome. That is great. Thank you so much. And I would like to start by asking you about what are your thoughts on the current situation in Syria? As I mentioned in the beginning, we have different factions and different groups gaining control in different areas of Syria. And what are you seeing in terms of like facts and practical observations on the ground? What are your take on the current situation? What are the factions that are gaining power? What are the factions that you see they're losing power, and so on and so forth?
So the beautiful thing about what happened between November 29th and December 8th is that everybody got united to kick Bashar out, to kick the Assad regime out, and take power in the country after so many decades. And all those factions, they all came under one leadership. It's called the إدارة العمليات العسكرية, the military operation process. And they were able to topple the regime with really nothing that you could say was short of a miracle. Because everybody was expecting, once this happens, there's going to be slaughters all over. The Christians are going to be slaughtered. The Alawites are going to be slaughtered. The Shias are going to be slaughtered. None of that happened. People realized that it was time for a new era. The regime fled. The army fled. Bashar and his cronies all fled. And it was a bloodless like takeover, and this is what made it really very, very unique. And that's why everybody cheered and everybody applauded and said, okay, let's forget about whatever the factions had done in the past. We are the sons of today. Let's move forward and let's build Syria because Syria now is really, it's in shambles. It's bankrupt. It's in ruins, and it needs a lot of help from the Syrians themselves, the region, and from the international community.
Gotcha, gotcha. Yeah, and I'm curious to know your thoughts on the state of like secular opposition and secular forces in the revolution of in Syria, and specifically, we have seen like TV commentators showing without the hijab, Islamic hijab. We haven't seen like enforcement of Sharia law across the country, and it doesn't seem like this is going to be a government or kind of a ruling based on Sharia law, but we don't know yet. What are your thoughts on that? Is it something that's going to resemble things that happened in Taliban in Afghanistan? In the beginning, they were not enforcing those Sharia laws as strictly as they wanted, and gradually they start doing that, or you see a different perspective, a different story happening in Syria?
I see a different issue happening in Syria. I mean, and the reason is because Syria had been under a military dictatorship rule for the past like 50 plus years.
Right,
So the problem in it's not, the problem is not religion. In fact, the regime used religion themselves, used Christians and Muslims and Alawites, sheikhs,
right.
and
Hmm.
and priests to for their own like benefit. That's not the problem. The problem in Syria is that you don't want another dictatorship to emerge. You don't want a new dictator. So it has to be by like peaceful transition of power. The government that gets elected is elected because of a program, and the program, you can measure the success or the failure of the government that implements it. If they implement it, they can reapply, like to get another 4 or 5 years in power for to work on the program. If they fail, they go home, and another program, another government comes in to help with their program. So that's what the issue is. The Muslim world has not had a problem with religion itself. Religion was never the issue in the Muslim world, like in the Christian world, where the religion, the Pope had armies, and they could excommunicate people, and they could like kick people out of the kingdom of heaven, or they could give them something signed, and you can go enter heaven. That does not
Yeah.
happen. That never happened in the Muslim world. So that's
I
why
mean, except for
secularism.
maybe in Islamic Republic, maybe something similar to that kind of happened in Iran. But we can discuss that further down the line. Yeah.
Yes. So in itself, it's in the Islamic Republic of Iran. It's also dictatorship
Right.
that uses religion, but it's one
Exactly. Right.
person that calls all the shots. And this is, I mean, we're done. The world today is so complicated that you cannot have one person calling the shots. Yes, you can have a president,
Exactly.
but that president should have checks and power, like imbalances, against any authoritarian use of power. You can't just go ahead and throw people in jail because they stand up to you and they don't agree with you. So, and again, secularism came as an answer in the Christian world against
Right.
the religion, the Catholicism interfering. And I'll give you an example.
Right.
When the European scientists discovered that it is it that it is that Earth is not the center of the world. In fact, Earth rotates around the sun. They made a fuss out of it, and they threatened to kill them. And they, like, even some of them, they did go ahead and crucify them and kill them and burn them. They had a problem with those guys of their like findings of science. In Islam, we never had that problem. In Islam, it's a totally different problem. It's one person, Amir al-Mu'mineen, who can go ahead and kill somebody or let them go, who can go ahead and give somebody, a poet who comes and gives them like a nice poem, oh, go ahead and give him his weight in gold. That money is not yours. That money is the people's money that got paid from like taxes and zakat and so, and it needs to be spent on public issues, not to be given for your own things. So that's, I think, is the problem in the Muslim world today that has ruled. What we need is we need a civil type of rulership of government, where a government, as I said, comes in, they say, here's our diagnosis of the problem. We have education, health problem, work problems, for example.
Right.
And
Right.
here is what we think is the solution. Elect us. If they get elected, they can use these resources of the state to help them with that
Mhm.
for a period of time, 4 or 5 years. Okay, and we
Right.
decide that. The
Exactly.
people have to
Mhm.
decide that. And if they do a good job, we can go ahead and re-elect them again. And until we find out they're no longer doing it, we send them home and we hire somebody else. The government has to work for the people, not the people working for the government.
Exactly. And from that, and I know earlier you alluded to the issue of minorities, and I wanted to know your thoughts on why we don't have like massive clashes between different minorities in Syria. What do you think is the cause, and what's driving that like peaceful coexistence between different minorities in Syria? And at least we don't see a widespread, massive clash between different minorities in Syria. What are your thoughts on that? What do you think? Why you think this is happening in Syria?
It's because of two reasons. The first reason is minorities under the Assad regime were
Hmm.
also persecuted, maybe not as much as the majority, but they were. So they could not like voice concern or voice opposition. If they voice opposition, whoever you are, you're going to be thrown in jail or killed. And we saw a lot of people coming out of jails, like because they had a different opinion. The other
Right.
reason is why you don't see that is because we saw that those guys who went in and liberated Syria, they
Hmm.
treated the minorities the same way they treated the majority. They treated them with a handshake, with a hug, with a smile. And they told them, you are partners in this. You are not guests. You are not our guests. You are partners. It's very different. If I come and visit you at your home, I am a guest at your home. And I need to leave at certain time when the visit is over. They are
Right.
not guests in Syria. They are partners in a homeland. That means they have the equal rights and equal responsibilities to build this country like everybody else. So everybody is now equal. And that's why you see them like thinking, wow, this is a chance for all of us to come and build Syria, like the case before the Assad and the Ba'ath, the party that ruled, where it was totally different. The Ba'ath Party was chauvinic, like type of like pro-Arab party. It excommunicated the Kurds that are not Arabs, for example. And now you see that the Kurds are thinking we want to come in and be part of this in Syria, because if I'm equal to everybody else, I have the same rights and responsibilities. I want to be building this homeland for me,
Gotcha.
not only for
Mhm.
me, for my children and my grandchildren.
Gotcha. And then I'm curious to know your thoughts about HDS Tahrir Sham's forming an inclusive government. We have seen Ahmed al-Shar, including people who are close to him and people who had worked with him before in positions in the government. Do you think this is going to lead into a government that's exclusively controlled by Ahmed al-Shar and his team, or no? You think there's going to be an inclusive government where other factions and other parties are kind of involved? What are your takes on that?
So what they said is that until March 1st, they're going to have people that are just there to just run the day-to-day businesses that were there before. And then March 1st is going to be announced like an inclusive government. And they have the right to choose people from their own, but they also have to give like other people the right to nominate people and be given positions of their own, as long as everybody is working with the same rights, responsibilities, equal rights, and working towards one homeland for all.
Gotcha. And so from what you said, I gather that you are optimistic about the potential for having an inclusive government in Syria pretty soon, because we have heard from Ahmed Ashar that it may take 4 years, 3 to 4 years to have an election in Syria. But do you think it's like a red flag, or no? This is not a problem, and you will have a democratic and inclusive government in Syria.
Yeah. So in order to have elections, you need
Mhm.
to have parties and
Right.
give the people like ample time to study the parties and their programs so that they could go ahead and give an informed like it's an informed decision. You can't just like shove in an election and with a country exactly like Syria. And honestly, nobody would want to run now and make it and want to go ahead and grab power. The country is bankrupt. You don't have money in the banks. You have a lot of like sanctions still on the country, so you're not
Right.
like it's difficult to move around and get money into so that you could get the engine, the government starting to work. So that's one thing. So it's again, in order to have elections, you need to have parties. You need to, in order to have parties, you need to have a law that governs those parties. Like so, you have to submit your application to a government that approves the party, and then the party needs to announce their program in a very clear way. They need to do that in like public media outlets, not only on their own private outlet. And then you need to go ahead and print like the application where people are going to be able to choose and from that thing. So that
Right.
takes time.
Mhm.
And that's, I think, why he's saying it's going to take some time, maybe 3 years, 4 years, until we reach what we want in terms of the elections.
Gotcha, gotcha. So you think that's a normal process, that this is the amount of time that it will take for parties to form, people to study them, and be able to make an informed decision. Uh, and
Yes.
then I'm curious to know your thoughts about women's rights, other human rights, in Syria as we move forward. As I mentioned earlier, there is some indication that it will not be a situation like the Islamic Republic. But I want to know more details based on your information. I want to know more detail about uh, what's going to be the future of Syria in terms of women's rights and human rights.
So women, Syrian women have been very active. Even
Right.
from before the revolution, they have been active. You have women in all like types of like public positions, in private positions, and like doctors, engineers, lawyers, judges, and they got even more active after the revolution. And like not only just active in the revolt itself, they got active in the civil society, in organizing themselves, forming their own like non-governmental organizations, taking care of a lot of things that came because of the revolution and because of the regimes like the dictatorship and ruthless way they dealt with the people. So the women took a big part of this in their organization. They have done a wonderful job. I don't think that women are going to have a problem. And however, some women were like some of the rights were taken from them. For example, that is not going to happen again. And I'll give you an example. Like during
Mhm.
the Assad the father regime,
Right.
so the girls were prevented from wearing the hijab. It's like Turkey at one time when they go to school. And if she wore a hijab, she would not get promoted in work and she would not get promoted in the public arena. I think that's going to be gone. Any woman with the qualifications necessary for the job is going to be able to compete to get that job with other people that have the exact qualifications to run that job. And that is, I think, fair for everybody. So I think women have done a tremendous job, and the Syrians themselves like support the women working in the public and in the private arena like before.
Gotcha. And another question, kind of shifting gears towards different groups and factions that are active in Syria. For example, organizations like National Coalition of Syrian Revolutionary Opposition Forces, or Syrian National Army, which is closer to Turkey. I wanted to kind of go over each of these organizations, if you will, and talk about each one of them. Let's start with the Syrian National Army that's operating in the north. What do you take on them? What they have been doing right now, and do you see them as something that a faction that will join the future government of Syria, or uh, overall? I'm just curious to know your analysis and your perspective on them.
So every anybody worked in the armies or in the factions are going to be unified under one army. It's the national army of the
Nice.
next state of Syria, and they're going to come in not as factions. They're going to come in as individuals, and they're going to be like placed where it is best for them to be placed, like according to their own the tasks that they can do. So there is no not it's not going to be a state of factions, and they have already agreed on this. There are even talks with the with ASSAD, which is
Mhm.
the Turkish arm that governs the Turkish part that governs northeast of Syria, that to come in and unfold in one army as well. Let the foreigners go back to where they need to go. The Syrians stay, and they become part of the army.
Gotcha. That's amazing. That's great news to hear. And also asking about the other secular opposition groups, as I mentioned earlier, like National Coalition of Syrian Revolutionary Opposition Forces. We heard some statements from them in the beginning, but according to my knowledge, we haven't heard that much from them. Are they busy working in Damascus, or uh, everything is kind of run by like Tahrir al-Sham, or what's going on with those groups? And do you have any updates from those?
So those again, anybody that was like held arms and took arms, they are now required to go ahead and unify under one umbrella. And
Right.
their leaders are going to be appointed to positions within that new army that is being formed. So, and then the soldiers are going to be like placed into ranks into the next upcoming army. That's probably why we did not hear from them, and that's why we did not hear probably we didn't hear any news of them fighting each other, because they know that this country is going to belong to all of us. There is no reason for us to go ahead and ruin it.
Gotcha. And then speaking of transitional justice, we haven't seen again, we haven't seen like widespread extrajudicial kind of violence or prosecution going after remnants of the Assad regime by revolutionaries. We have seen like occasionally case by case here and there some stuff, but we haven't seen a widespread activity that's similar to extrajudicial violence. And what are your thoughts on that? Why that's been under control, and how Syrian people have been able to control that to a good extent?
I think because people, they saw that the most important big guys, the biggest like criminals, they're gone. And
Mhm.
so they understand that maybe the ones that were left back, they were like forced to do things, and we don't want to go ahead and cause bloodshed. And there is going to be like a judicial like body for transitional justice, because at the end you do need transitional justice to happen, and that should include anybody that committed a crime, regardless of where they come from. And that's the impression that people are getting, that this transitional justice is going to take care of this for everybody that got hurt and that have rights to be like taken back, taken for them, and guaranteed for them. So the issue of transitional justice is, and that's why we hadn't seen any bloodshed, is that people trust the open arms that have been extended to them, and there has not been any like mass vengeance killing. There has not been any mass arrests into that, and that's why it has been quiet. There have been like here and there you might get like something happens in here or there, but those things are not coming from HTS. It did not. It came from other. In fact, HTS came to the rescue to keep the peace within those communities.
Gotcha. And in the beginning, you mentioned a few points about a secular government for Syria, and I just wanted to open the stage and allow you to kind of elaborate on your thoughts on the future of Syria as a secular state, and what you see is going to be best for Syria, or any other thoughts that you have on this specific topic in Syria.
I think the best thing for Syria is to have a civil state. a civil state where no another dictator can emerge. The people, the any ruler is accountable to the people, answers to the people. They are the ones who hire them, and they're the ones who fire them. That is what is needed today. Is secularism in terms of shoving the like everybody aside and just saying that this is the way. That's not going to happen. We've had secular countries, like North Korea is a secular country, the Soviet Union was a secular country, and you know what happened in that secular country. It was a huge dictatorship. There were a lot of people were killed in those states. So and in that regards, we issued a mithaq, a charter of 10 points. And in those are not the Constitution, but we think those could become the founding basis of the Constitution. And it's clear, for example, like in certain, like one of those 10 points, it says that the religious body should be independent from the state, and the state should be independent from the religious body. Meaning, like, you don't want somebody who is a sheikh who delivers, or a priest who delivers a Friday sermon khutbah, or a Sunday sermon, getting their sermon from the intelligence and telling them this is what you
Right.
need to do.
Right.
You don't want that. You want them to run their own business alone, and you don't want at the
Yeah.
same time the government, which has been elected, to be interfered by religious entities telling them you can't do this and you can't do that, because the state itself
Exactly.
should should be neutral towards all its citizens. People who do good are rewarded. People who do bad are punished, and that's how it should be.
Exactly. I totally agree with that, and I feel like the issue we have in Iran is exactly what kind of you mentioned in there. You know, a clergy wants to talk, and then a lot of times they're just clergies that are aligned with the government, and they say things that have been told to them to say. It's not a separation of mosque and state, if you will. And I feel like with that, and I would like to go to my other question about like foreign powers involvement in Syria. So we have seen a great amount of influence from Turkey, or had been claimed that there's a great amount of influence of Turkey over Syria. And we've seen, like, as I mentioned in the beginning, some incursions from Israel inside Syria in Golan Heights. What are your thoughts on that? And what do you think how these foreign powers are going to influence the power dynamics inside Syria?
So everybody is going to try to influence what happened in Syria.
Right.
The issue is what happened in Syria is no one's business but the Syrians. And the Syrians should be the one that call the shots. And for example, Turkey was a great help to Syrians throughout the revolution, and even in the past month from when things started. Turkey used a lot of pushback against Russia and Iran to prevent them from like helping Assad in a military way, like by force, when the rebels like came, the freedom fighters, I'll call them, when they started their final pushback. So Israel has been also doing like incursions. It's more than incursions. A lot of aggression against Syrians, against Syrian towns, Syrian cities, bombing of whatever is left from Assad, because now they know that, oh my God, so Assad was our puppet. Yeah, we didn't like him, but he was our own. Like SOB, like what Reagan one day said about Noriega, and now he is gone. They don't control who is there, so they went ahead and they destroyed all the weaponry that was left by the Assad regime and the military.
Right. Yeah, they
So
did.
people are not happy with what Israel is doing, although they cannot do anything about it because they just came out of a deadly like 11 13 12 year like war that like left Syria in a very weak position. But Syria is going to have the final call because Syrians are resilient citizens. They're resilient, they work hard, and they have proven that in every place they went to in their diaspora. They were welcomed into Europe, into Turkey, into Arab countries, and they made a difference. And now they're free to go back, and they're starting to go back and gush back to Syria so that to help Syria stand. And you are going to see a very different Syria going forward.
Absolutely, yeah. Those moments and scenes of people flooding back to Damascus after the fall of Bashar al-Assad was saddening at the same time, kind of amazing historical to see people coming back to live in freedom in their capital. And one of the questions I had was public opinion in Syria regarding Russia and Iran. Kind of curious to know your thoughts and based on your observations in the field, what people think about uh, the Islamic Republic, the regime, and also Russia.
So the Syrians are clear in their minds. They have no problem with the Iranian people. They know that the Iranian people are freedom-loving people. They love freedom, and they're also resilient. And they've been living there like as neighbors, maybe second door neighbors. Our first door neighbor is Iraq. Second door neighbor
Right.
is
Yeah.
Iran, and we've had great relationships with the Iranians throughout history. They do have a problem, however, with the clergy that is ruling Iran, and that came in under the banner of Palestine, and they wreaked havoc in there, supporting Assad. Instead of coming when the revolution started, instead of Iran saying, we have no business with Assad. He is like this guy that has done a lot of atrocities. We take our hands off and we are with the people. They didn't do that. We were expecting them to do that. They didn't do that. And that's why you see today the Syrians have a big problem with the clergy. Even after the revolution, like finished in this past month and won and it was victorious, we see the Ayatollah Khamenei come out and others and saying, oh, you haven't seen yet. It's not over yet. And we have our own interest and we're going to fight for it. So are you saying that you're going to fight and do more killings even after your Assad is gone and was toppled by the people? So
Correct.
that's how they take it. As for
Yeah.
Russia, Syrians also have no problem with the Russian people. We've had a great relationship with the Russian people. At a time, I like even during Assad the father's rule, during the Soviet Union, the Russians were welcomed, and the people like felt close to Russians, for example, and you would go and there was like, for example, there was this cultural center, Russian or Soviet cultural center. People would go there, they will play chess, they would be given a chess set and a clock, and people. So we had no problem. It was
Right.
only
Mhm.
after September 2015 when Russia started bombing, their jets started bombing Syrian cities and towns and killing in mass numbers, killing Syrians. And that's when the what that's what the Syrians have a problem with, is the government of Russia. However, today is today, and if somebody now realizes that maybe they made a mistake, and that was like they no longer want that, and they want to extend their hand in a hand of friendship to the Syrian people, I think they will find that the Syrians will extend a hand of friendship back.
I see. Yeah, and I think that there's a common problem. The Iranian people do not like the clergy as well. The majority of the Iranian people are not in favor of the Ayatollah, and he has been ravaging Iran as well. So I feel like that's a common problem that both people of Iran and people of Syria are dealing with and have to deal with. Uh, with that, I would like to kind of ask you if there's anything else that you would like to talk about and bring up as as a final point in our discussion.
I think that what we saw in Syria happen in the past 4 weeks is an earthquake. Really, it's a political earthquake, and it will have ramifications. It will have reverberations in the region,
Correct.
and we might not see it right away. And it's not the Syrians. The Syrians are not going to leave Syria and go start fighting other people and other countries and like do like export of the revolution. We're not going to have that. But I think other people are going to look at the Syrians and say, hey, if the Syrians were able to do this on their own, with all the forces being pushed against them, we can do it. And I think that's what is going to happen. And that's why you see there is some nervousness in some countries in the region of the
Right.
Syrian revolution. And they have been trying, they tried their best in the final days of the regime to keep Assad in power, even
Right.
connecting here to the Biden administration. But we pushed back hard so that that does not happen. I am very optimistic for the region. Now we have one dictator out. We're waiting to get more and more of them
More of them
out
out.
and let the people rule their land.
That is amazing. That's something I wish for the region as well, and for people of Syria to be prosperous, live in a democratic state, and also for Iranian people as well. Uh, and
Inshallah.
yeah, so I feel like you kind of think that like HDS, Tahrir Sham, they're gonna have a like more inclusive government. You're optimistic about the future, having democracy in Syria, right?
We're pushing for this.
Okay,
We're pushing. It's not like this is not going to come to you on a platter. Like so you
right,
have to push. See,
right,
there's a verse in the Quran says, "وَلَوْلَا دَفْعُ اللَّهِ النَّاسَ بَعْضَهُم بِبَعْضٍ لَفَسَدَتِ الْأَرْض." Had it not been that Allah had put this law that people are going to push back against each other, without this pushback, there would be a lot of corruption in the land. So
right,
you need to push back. If you see something wrong, you push back, and you know you might get hurt, but you still push back, because if you don't push back, you're going to get hurt more. So that is what is happening. So the Syrian people are pushing back. If Ahmad al-Shara says, I want it my way, people are going to push back at him and say, "No, we like you, thank you very much, but this is what we want." And he will understand, and he's going to reciprocate. He knows that he can't just go ahead and use arms in that sense to go ahead and like kill people. That's not going to happen.
yeah, absolutely. So okay, that's great. I'm really happy to hear that from an expert who's kind of been involved in the Syrian revolution from the get-go and been there and been active. This is really promising. It's really positive news to hear. And I feel like already people in Iran are kind of inspired by the revolution in Syria and the success in Syria. And I feel like Ayatollah already, he had multiple kind of speeches where he was saying the axis of resistance is still strong, but in reality, that shows that he's scared. They feel that they got weakened, and hopefully, we will see their fall soon as well. Thank you so much for being our guest today. I really enjoyed our discussion and learned a lot today. Really appreciate it. Hope to have you again and again in the coming months as situation develop and evolves in Syria. Thank you, Dr. Tara.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Doctor. Really appreciate it. I enjoyed our discussion. It was really nice.